what have you changed and improved since Ian? Is that kind of where you got to this, or what would be a good way to lead to what got you to this?
Okay. So, Diane, we really looked last year at what was happening across our county, across the state, and in particularly in those hardest hit counties. You know, what were people watching? What was informing their decisions? We noticed that there's a lot of people that aren't preparing in advance. Unfortunately, they wait until there's a storm out there potentially threatening us, and that's when they start to take action. So our guide this year is really focused on that ready, set, protect. And it's really all about time being the one resource you can't get more of. So from the time that we start to see a storm forming out there and we're in that 5 or 3 day cone, that's Mother Nature's way of saying you better start paying attention because I could potentially really change your life in the next 3 to 5 days. So we want to make sure that when we first see that storm, that people are looking up their evacuation zones. They're making sure that they get the things that they need in their kit. They figure out if I have to evacuate, where are they going to go? Can they go to a friend or a family? Can they stay in a hotel? Or if they don't have other options, we certainly have public shelters that are available for people. And then we want to get into the set, and that's when we need people to start taking action. So as that storm starts getting closer to us, we want to stop paying attention to the cone, start looking at where those risk areas are. So how far out of the wind fields? How much rain are we potentially going to get? And where is the storm surge? If you go back and you look at the storm surge projections for Hurricane Ian, it was almost the entire western coast of Florida. So even though you might not get the direct impact of the storm, we want to make sure that people understand that there's still a risk. So those are the things that we want to start paying attention to. That time when we're in the set phase is when, if we have to issue the evacuation orders, they'll come out. And we need to people to pay attention to the timing of the storm. It takes us a lot of time to move people out of harm's way. As you know, Pinellas County is a peninsula, and we only have so many roadways that take us out of the county. So we want to make sure that people are taking that into consideration with their planning. It can take us up to 50 hours if we have a Category 5 storm threatening us to move people out of our county.
And how much time would it take maybe if we just had a evacuation, a zone evacuation? How much time would it be to get people out of the county?
Yeah, so we have all of our clearance times in our guide to help show people how much time it's going to take. We go anywhere from 16 hours all the way up to 17 hours. So 17 hours for a zone A, 20 hours for zone B, 26 for a C, 42 for a D, and 50 hours for a level E evacuation. And what I think people don't understand either, it's not just them that's evacuating. We have lots of hospitals, we have nursing homes, assisted living facilities, we have educational institutions. We have a lot of people that are trying to move out of harm's way, and that's where that congestion starts to come in.
And what complications are added when you say there's an evacuation just for zone A, and then other people just decide to evacuate at the same time?
So that can actually add to our clearance times, and that's why it's important for people to understand what is their personal risk. If you live in a house that's better fortified or you've done mitigation to it, if you live outside of one of the evacuation areas, you don't necessarily have to go. Now, we want to make sure that people that live in our manufactured and our mobile homes, they're moving every time because they're very susceptible. We also have people in our community that rely on electricity for life-sustaining medical equipment. So we want to make sure that those people are paying attention and they have a plan. So if they don't have a generator at home, they can get to a facility that will have a backup power source.
What happens when we've had the last 2 hurricanes where we, appropriately evacuated in Pinellas but didn't need to? What does that lead to in the future?
I think, unfortunately, for some people, it leads to complacency. So for the next storm, they might say nothing happened last time, so they'll decide not to evacuate. It's interesting. I heard a statistic not too long ago that more people died during Hurricane Katrina because they were comparing it to Hurricane Camille. And I think we saw that, unfortunately, to the south of us. People were comparing that storm to Charlie, and it's different. Every storm is different. We have to pay attention to the risks for that storm.
And let's talk about that graphic, Tim. I want to talk about how you are and so I guess we're learning that people didn't quite understand storm surge. So how are we, I guess, explaining that better this time?
So I think one of the things that we saw is that people didn't understand how far inland storm surge can impact. We heard down in Lee County that went into 24 miles inland. We heard some people say when they heard 15 feet of storm surge, they thought they meant it only is going to come inland 15 feet, and that's just not the case. And I think we've got some great video and unfortunately pictures of how impactful that storm surge is. So we changed our graphic to be able to illustrate to people that if we have 5 to 7 feet of storm surge here projected for Pinellas County, when that water starts getting pushed in, that'll come into our zone A. Now the rest of our zones are still going to feel the winds and the rain. They're going to have those other impacts, but they're not going to have that life-threatening storm surge impact them. And this is what we evacuate people for. So again, we wanted to show them for our level C evacuation where you're having maybe up to 15 feet of storm surge. You can see how catastrophic it is here in zone A, actually pushing buildings off of foundations, just like we saw in Lee County. But those impacts are also going to start to get pushed into our zone B and our zone C. And then you can see the most catastrophic for us, it would be that level E evacuation. And this could be, 26 feet, could even be higher for storm surge. For zone A and zone B, this is just unsurvivable. Even here, single-story homes in our C zone could be underwater. And then you're still going to see impacts, even if maybe up to 2 to 4 feet in our zone E. And so people need to understand that that water can really get pushed far inland.
Okay, let's see. How do you go through the thought process where it's going to take 17 hours minimum to evacuate zone A, and we have a forecast with a lot of uncertainty? So what are the challenges and how much is going into you making those decisions?
Right, so as soon as a storm forms out there, we start monitoring it. We start looking at, how long is it going to get to us? We really pay attention to when that arrival of tropical storm force winds are, because at that point, it's not going to be safe for people to be driving around. We've got to get all of our high-profile vehicles off the road. We're not going to be able to get out there and help people if they need that. And then when that storm surge starts coming in, that's just, we cannot send anybody out at that point because then we're putting other people at jeopardy. So we work backwards from that time frame. And then we have to think about how big the storm could potentially be. We're really paying attention to the language that the National Hurricane Center is putting out. And if you remember for Hurricane Ian, very early on, they were talking about Ian being a major storm. Some of the things that we looked at was how warm are the Gulf waters. Late season storms, we know the Gulf of Mexico is really warm. That's like jet fuel, right? So anything that was going to come into the Gulf of Mexico, we worried about that rapid intensification. Those storms that go from tropical storm to perhaps even a Category 5 within just a couple of days. And time is that one resource we can't get more of. So we really have to pay attention to the timing of that storm. The other thing is with every advisory that comes out, sometimes these storms slow down, sometimes they speed up, and sometimes they get even bigger. So you could have winds that might have been 150 miles from the center now extend out to 200, 250 miles. All of that cuts into your time. So we're paying close attention to that, and we really have to have that kind of drop dead time for when we have to make those decisions to help move people to safety.
Okay, and other challenges, and what happens when you're in that room at that moment and having that tough decision? You have a team of people all really critically thinking about the risks either way on deciding on an evacuation.
Yes, absolutely. So we map out kind of a best, mid, worst case scenario. We're looking at for a series of days. I bring in my whole team. We're going through what if scenarios, how many shelters are we going to have to open? How many people are we moving? What is the timing for that? We're talking with the school board because they have to make that critical decision for closing schools. And once we start shutting down schools, that impacts the entire community. We're working very closely with our executive policy group, which has our county administrator, county attorney, we have the sheriff, we have the Fire Chiefs Association, we have our communications director, myself, and then also the director for the Department of Health, who helps us a lot with our special needs populations. So we're all in that room together. We're talking about the many factors. We're talking about the timing. You don't want to issue an evacuation order at 2 o'clock in the morning because people aren't going to be up. So we have to look at all of those things. So together, we're walking through that. We're thinking about all of our facilities and our partners that have to evacuate to be able to make the best decision possible.
And why do schools have to close early in those situations, even earlier than we would think compared to what we do for our own homes.
So the majority of the places that we use for shelters during a storm are those public schools. We need to be able to have time for their staff to go home, get their homes ready, prepare and everything, and then bring them back. And we need time to be able to get our supplies to the schools and be able to open them up. We rely heavily upon schools also to help with transportation for our special needs population. And we have over 3,000 people currently registered. And those are the folks that are most vulnerable due to medical conditions or they need transportation assistance. So it takes a lot of resources and a lot of people to be able to open up and operate all those shelters and get all that transportation going.
Okay, I think that's something that's not talked about enough. So why are the schools closing?
Yeah.
Tim, what do you think? Is there something, an angle for you?
Do you know Tom Iovino? Is that
He used to be our PIO, and now he's with the Department of Health.
okay? You can address Diane. I'll just ask
Okay.
a few things. You would always say we have to, shake people out of their hurricane amnesia. Like, how do you guys continue to do that? Because a lot of times we're like, everything's fine. We forget that, about these huge storms that even a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Irma.
So I think it's important to people understand it doesn't have to be a catastrophic storm to have impacts. We could have a tropical storm that sits on top of us for days and drops a lot of rain. Look at what happened across almost the entire state of Florida last year. Even though they're not coastal communities, they didn't get the storm surge. As the storm moved across Florida, it continued to drop a lot of rain. That's why paying attention to those hazards is really important, and for people to understand what their risks are. Do you live in an area that when there's a heavy afternoon rain, does it flood quickly? Well, if it does, and you're in a non-evacuation zone, you probably want to do sandbags or something to protect your home. We plan on using, unfortunately, the video footage and the messaging and the things that we saw happen down south, because I think a lot of people don't realize. We've actually heard some testimonials of people that said they didn't think it was going to be that bad. Oh, the last storm, it was a few feet of storm surge. Oh, it's never come up this high, but it's always a possibility. And that's why we have to continue to message and let people know. We're not going to call evacuations if we don't think it's a serious storm. So really important that people are listening to what are the protective measures that your emergency managers are telling you.
And what about the messaging that, people have to do a lot of their own protections and think about how to save themselves or to protect themselves in situations like this?
You mean for the people that stay?
Just in general, because people want to sit there and say, okay, I'm not doing anything. It's government. They come help me. Is there a level of we need to get people to self-protect or, like get some kind of reaction ahead of time that they have a responsibility for their own safety to some level?
Yeah. Every individual, every family, every business has a responsibility to prepare. It's your responsibility to help take care of yourself. And we tell people they need to have at least a 7-day supply of the things that you need, the food, the water, your medication. Because we've seen situations where, it's going to take us some time to be able to get those streets back open, for businesses to reopen. So it's really important that as a homeowner or a renter, you have a plan. You have a plan for everyone in your family, for your kids, for your furry kids. If you have anybody in your family that might need assistance, look out for your neighbor too. Make sure that your neighbor has what they need, or bring them over to have them stay with you during the storm. For businesses, it's really important that they prepare. If they're in an evacuation zone, what do they need to move to try to protect it from storm surge? Having good insurance. Insurance will help you financially recover from a disaster. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is not going to give a lot of money to people if they're impacted. And I think, people think sometimes the government's going to be able to help them with everything. And we will certainly do everything we can, but we cannot do everything for them. So it's really important that everybody puts their plan in place.
And a lot of times everybody's prepared for just, okay, that moment when a storm hits. How much preparation do we need for the after after and the recovery time after a storm hits?
Well, as we've seen, it can take communities months and years to truly recover. So it is really important that people have a plan in place, and that's where government will help with that. You know, we really need to look at our permitting process, temporary housing, if we had to set up those locations, where we do that. The debris, we saw how much debris was generated down in Lee County. So having good plans for how we're going to handle the debris. But again, everybody's got to be thinking about, you know, the long term. And, you know, it may be, unfortunately, when you come back to your home, maybe your home has really been damaged and you've got to get repairs for that. So, you know, having good plans in place, and if you need assistance, then filing for that through the agencies that come in to offer it.
Okay. Let's see, what else would be the big challenges for you in this? What have we not covered? I think that would be something that.
So I think what most people don't realize is, you know, we start days in advance. So as soon as we see a storm out there potentially brewing, we're already having coordination calls with many of our partners. We start having calls with the State of Florida Division of Emergency Management. The National Hurricane Center gets on those stores. We also have calls with all of our partners. We start talking with all of our shelter providers, the people that support special needs. We're going to be reaching out more to our healthcare facilities. Again, we've got so many different entities in the community that need to prepare, and we want to make sure that we're getting information to them and then helping provide them with guidance and maybe able to answer their questions in advance. We actually review the comprehensive emergency management plans for assisted living facilities and nursing homes, and we want to make sure that they're putting those plans in place. So we're coordinating with so many different entities before a storm occurs, and we actually have a whole list of conference calls that we are in, making sure that we're looking at everything. If we think that the storm is going to be really big and the resources are going to be bigger than we need, then we'll start making those requests to the State Division of Emergency Management in advance. For Hurricane Ian, we had already been talking to the state about bringing in urban search and rescue teams, water rescue teams, you know, making sure that we could have more folks down here to help us with damage assessment, you know, trying to get as many resources in county in advance, or making sure that they're staged nearby where we can bring them in afterwards.
And how much does it take to reverse a commitment toward a path when we realize a storm is going another direction?
Well, we don't usually really reverse it, because the challenge with these storms is, and if you looked at Ian, there was a 20-mile shift as the storm came off of Cuba. That was the difference between it coming to Tampa Bay and going where it did. So those storms can still have wobble. So again, we want to look at those bigger fields for the impacts. You know, we still had winds here. We still had a little bit of rain here in Pinellas County. Heaven forbid that storm shifts a little. So, you know, we want to monitor that very carefully. And again, we take a lot of this into consideration when we issue those evacuation orders. You know, I don't want people to hear we're outside of the cone and now they think it's safe for them to stay, because we still may be at risk.
Let's see here then.
Coming back is a big challenge too. People want to
Okay.
come back to the county quickly.
Okay, coming back after a storm. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people will want to try to return to their homes and get back into the county as quickly as possible. You know, even for people that shelter in place or in the county, they want to get out and they want to look around. They want to see what happened. We really need everybody to continue to stay in their safe place. We need time to get out there, look at the damage assessment. We need to assess those bridges, make sure it's safe. For the barrier islands, we've moved police and fire out of those areas. They're going to need time to get back out there. We've got to see what's happened. We have to make sure that we are clearing the roads, moving as much debris as we can so we can get to our critical facilities like hospitals. And then we'll let the public know when it's safe for them to start to come back into the county or to return to their homes.
And how critical is it for your team to follow every update and every single, you know, advisory from the Hurricane Center that comes out? You know, how important is that?
It's critical that we look at every advisory, because the storm can change. So it can speed up, which is not good for us. It can get larger. And, you know, if we lose time, that makes it worse for us. So we always have to be looking at that. And, I never want to be in a situation where we go to bed at night and then we wake up the next morning and now we see that we've lost 12 hours of time. The storm is bigger. It's going to get here faster. So we're looking at every advisory that comes out every 6 hours. We're waking up and we're looking at it. We're listening to the meteorologist, talking with the National Weather Service. We'll even call the National Hurricane Center directly, really looking at, if you looked at Hurricane Ian, for us, they thought it was going to be a Category 4 storm. But when we looked at the direction it was coming, it was going to be more like 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, which for us is a level C evacuation. So we really look at each kind of nuance of what's going on. We look at how saturated the ground is. What's the current water level in our canals, our riverines, our areas that are prone to flooding? So we know if the ground's already saturated and those water levels are high, even a small amount of rain is going to impact those areas. And we might have to adjust our planning for all of those conditions.
Okay, let's see. We covered that. Let's see.
Anything else,
Some of the-
Stephanie?
I'm thinking of it, I'm still debating on how much to put out there about us studying how to get the response and changing wording and improving.
So the University of South Florida actually did a study to kind of look at what were some of the reasons why people chose not to evacuate. Some of their concerns are traffic. So we usually recommend people evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, because if you remember for Hurricane Irma, where the evacuation started in southeast Florida, then moved to southwest Florida, then up to central Florida, you just have so many people on the road, a lot of traffic congestion. So if you can find a place to stay locally, that's even better. Or if you're going to go out of county, do that well in advance so you're out of harm's way and you don't get stuck on the road during a hurricane coming in. Some of the other things we heard is people have pets. So make a plan for your pets. And we also have pet-friendly shelters that are available. We also heard that people were concerned about bus transportation. Pinellas Suncoast Transportation will actually offer free rides to shelters when we order evacuation. So I never want transportation to be a reason why people don't go. The other thing is we saw that Lyft was offering free rides to help people evacuate. So I think we need to do more to help get that information out to the public. Those public shelters are there, so that way if people don't have other places to go, they're available to them. I know they're not the most comfortable, but it's better than being in an area where the storm surge can come in or staying in a home that's not safe from the winds. And then for our people with special needs, we want to make sure that we're bringing them in. These are people that have identified that they have medical issues or they need special assistance. We want them to come into these shelters. And last year we just saw only about an 80% reduction in people seeking shelter. So unfortunately, we want to make sure we get people out of harm's way, because what happened down in Lee County very easily could have been us last year.
Okay. And when you decide with your team that, we're going to evacuate Zone A starting at this time, who makes that call in Pinellas County? Do they give you the power to do that, or who do you have to go through?
We make that recommendation, then we get approval through our executive policy group, then we take that to our commission, and then we put out our local state of emergency.
Okay, so it's the county commissioners?
The commissioners usually they may delegate authority to the county administrator in advance, yeah. Because it seems like every time we've been doing it lately, it's like on a weekend that we're pre-positioning for the local state of emergency.
Okay.
And the local state of emergency gives us the power and authorities to be able to do emergency procurements, which is really helpful. So if there's something additional that we hadn't planned for or we need to get, we can put that out immediately.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Did you want to touch on anything with tourism?
All right, we have a lot of tourists in our area and people that are here during hurricane season. How do we reach them, and what is the message to them?
So we work very closely with our Convention and Visitors Bureau, our chambers. So we're sending out information to them. We want our tourists to have had a wonderful time here in Pinellas County. We want them to get home safely and come back later and bring their tourist dollars back and enjoy our beaches. But we do need to get them out of harm's way. That's another very vulnerable population that we need to make sure that they're evacuating so they don't end up in a shelter or end up stuck in the road or maybe even an airport because those flights will stop running. So it's really important that they're checking on flights, maybe even working with one of the hotel partners. Maybe they'll get them a nice vacation in another part of the state that's not going to be impacted by the storm.
What happens in the situation where we might have a hurricane form right off our coast and we have very little time to prepare?
We're going to do the very best that we can, and that's why it's really important. That's why we're monitoring, during hurricane season. We make sure that we're constantly paying attention to any advisories, any of those invests that they're looking at. They've actually extended that out now. Now they're going to do 7 days. So it gives us even a little bit more of an idea of when a storm might form, and looking at that very closely. Luckily, when something forms right off the coast, it's not going to have time to get super strong, but we still could have impacts for that. So really important. We've done that a few times, just opened up a couple of community centers for those people that didn't feel safe staying at home for them to come in. It's important that people stay informed during hurricane season, and there's a couple of ways you can do that here in Pinellas County. You can sign up for Alert Pinellas, and we will send information right to your phone, either email or text you or give you a call. And the other thing that you can do is get our Ready Pinellas app. We do push notifications to that. You'll get weather alerts through that, or sign up through your local favorite news channel to get information, to be monitoring the storm. Really important. From June 1st to November 30th, people are paying attention to the tropics.
And how important is it for people to get information from an official source?
It's extremely important that people get information from an official source. There's a lot of people out there that, are maybe talking about the models, talking about where they think the storm is going to go. And the National Hurricane Center has a tremendous record with accuracy. They're getting even much better at looking at the intensification of storms. They're really putting out that comprehensive information. Our local weather forecasters, the National Weather Service, they are all looking at these models. So it's really important that people pay attention to an official news source. Might be tempting to look at it on your own, but I'm not a meteorologist. I rely upon the information coming from those experts to be able to help inform us the decisions that we need to make to protect the public.
And how challenging is it when you have a bunch of people making big decisions for our county and for all our residents, and yet you have your own personal and families to worry about? And how challenging can that be sometimes for your team when they have their own lives to prepare for too?
It's a challenge because we live in this community too, so we have to prepare our homes. I usually try to find, are there little lulls, little parts of the day where I can do stuff. Sometimes we rely on friends or family or neighbors to be able to help us. During Hurricane Ian, I would try to sneak out after the 5 o'clock advisory, and we'd already made decisions or we had plans going until the next advisory would come out, go home for a couple of hours, move all that lawn furniture into my house. Had lots of lizards running around, but it's really important. And I have to make sure that my staff and all of the county staff are prepared. We rely heavily upon county employees to help us staff the shelters, a lot of school employees. There's so many people that are helping this community to prepare. We have to prepare ourselves too. So from our standpoint, we want to make sure that we have our supplies, have that all in place in advance. We've got good plans. And then, as a storm is coming, our neighbors maybe see us doing things earlier than they are. And that's because we know that we're going to be working a lot of hours as that storm comes in.
Okay.
Have you got to mention our guide in disaster.pinellas.gov?
I have not mentioned the disaster site, yeah.
You don't have that pamphlet doesn't go with it, right?
The hurricane guide, yeah.
Does it go with it, or can we, so she can show it, or
Yeah, you
with
can,
that? Because we did talk about it, but I don't know if that connects enough
I
to
think
your.
you could talk about how you can get a copy of our disaster
Yeah.
guide on disaster.pinellas, and any information during emergencies is located.
See, this is why I need a handler.
Well, it's always good for another set of ears here to listen, for all of us to make sure, the angles are covered. Because like I said, even if my story here in this special is short, we can use this
Yes. Please.
for others.
And anytime you want anything more, even if it's a phone interview or a Teams interview, anything we can do. We've talked about too is maybe even having some availability in the mornings when we activate. So it's like if we just want to touch base and, you just even asking us like, hey, what are you guys doing today? What are you planning? What does your day look like? Because I think, to your point, people don't understand the amount of work that we're doing in advance. And by the time we're issuing the local state of emergency or the evacuation orders, people sometimes, we heard comments that people felt like we weren't doing anything. We weren't taking the storm seriously. And until they see offices closing and schools closing, they don't think we're doing stuff. And I could assure you, for EID, I think we started on Thursday and worked all through the weekend. So, long before people are hearing about the local state of emergency, we're already doing a lot of planning with thousands of people across the county.
That's good. That's good stuff too. Information from Pinellas County.
Great, so people can go to our website at disaster.pinellas.gov and get our guide. We're going to have our guide in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. They can download it. This information will also be in our Ready Pinellas app. You can pick it up at local libraries, at government offices. You even call our office if you need to get a copy. But disaster.pinellas.gov is a great source for people to go to. Blue skies and during an event, because that's where we'll post the real-time information, what shelters have opened, has the evacuation order been issued, any new press releases, the sandbags for the people that are getting sandbags to prevent flooding from rainfall. So lots of great information on that website. Blue skies to get your preparedness information and gray skies to get real-time information as to what's happening in the community.